Cool. Welcome to the pod, guys. The pod where we, as accounting and finance pros, try to share a bit about what we've been through, share our insights, essentially try to help you guys as business owners or finance pros level up. We are dads. We are men through different careers, but we're also passionate about this part of our profession. So welcome. Ash, how's it going?
All right, mate. You?
Yeah, good, mate. Good.
That's why.
How's the reporting life going?
Exciting. So yeah, just did a whole big Tableau to Power BI migration. So that was
Gone to from the dark side to the good side.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was a good side about a decade ago, right? So yeah, that was a big job.
Are you guys like on the Microsoft stack?
Yeah,
right?
pretty much. So as you are, Microsoft stack with everything. So now, so it's all full-fledged. So yeah, that was a big job. Got pushed through, so that was good. And then the reports sort of are reconciling from Tableau to Power BI. So I said, yeah, that's all working. So then, yeah, it's about now visualizations and getting everything up to scratch. How about yourself?
How do you do that? Is it all the coding and structures and stuff similar, or
No, it's all different, two different languages, right? So like with Power BI, you're using DAX as an example. Like Tableau's just got its own sort of like coding language. So you got to find the equivalents. You use things like ChatGPT to sort of figure some of it out, but you can't just do a bulk, like, just download all your measures and whack it in. You got to sort of individually try to figure it out. So yeah, it's a bit of work involved. And then I think the final part, the data validation part's probably the most critical, right? So any massaging that occurs within a report, it's challenging because you're like, oh, why didn't this happen in the back end data, and et cetera. So
yeah. Do you get a bit of grace though? Like if something doesn't go well?
We allowed for some room when I had to project manage the whole thing. Yeah, no, it was a tight turnaround, but we took it in a more like an iterative approach. So yeah, the good thing was sort of went, out of the 120 odd reports, only 60 got used. So guess what? 60 are being dropped. And then we just went from like that sort of approach and checked the highest.
120 reports.
There's 120 reports, individual reports.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and 60 of them had like one view. I was just like, delete, like not using, not bringing that one back up. So yeah.
Very apt conversation actually, Ash, because today's topic is on the power of data, financial data in particular, and turning those pieces of data, those numbers, into business insights. And I think last week when we were chatting, we were talking context, setting up, your accounting structures and principles for new business owners, or if you're an existing business owner or finance professional trying to start from scratch, or setting up a new ERP or GL, what do you need to think through? And one of the things that I think Ash mentioned was setting up your structure so that your downstream reporting is essentially useful, and doing it in such a way where you're almost working backwards, right? You're thinking about what am I trying to measure, what am I trying to manage, and then work backwards from that to see how you want to structure your data. So maybe let's talk about that, Ash. Just to recap a bit from last week, let's talk about firstly how we want to structure that and how you think through, particularly when you're sitting with your reporting team, of inputs of data, and if you could have your time again from the people that set up those systems, things that you'd like them to think about more diligently on.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back down to the industry that we're working in, and it goes back down to the levers of, the things of like revenue and like cost effectively. So what areas of revenue are we trying to track, and what areas of cost do we want to really maintain and figure out, and where are then your supplies coming through as expenses as well. So, in the recruitment world, basically what you're trying to check for is the types of revenue. Is it permanent revenue, temporary revenue? If you think it like the cost for temporary revenue, it's going to be all your labor costs that are coming through, because that's how you're going to be tracking that number. For your permanent, there is no labor cost in that case, so that's just going to be passed through. And then it's any other supplier expenses that you have, maybe systems or anything else, and you want to be tracking those streams down. So I'd be looking at the bare minimum first, but then I'd be also thinking about who's contributing to those buckets, and then how does that sort of flow through as well. So I wouldn't be slicing it to the nth degree, but I'd be slicing enough to, let's say, if it's a national company, perhaps by state, if it's got different practices, I'd think about using dimensions, or I'd be using something else.
Yeah. I was thinking about your roll-ups as well, right? Like your end stakeholder could be your board, could be your CEO, could be an investor. What measures are they measuring your business on? So it could be gross profit, direct margin, EBIT, all of that. And that's just purely from a P&L perspective. There's all these other elements as well when we talk about balance sheet. But essentially, as a business owner, you're measuring performance, and so your P&L is probably the most important part of that. But outside of that as well, Ash, so we're talking accounting concepts here, but there's also a financial data piece that goes into measuring things like performance and, I guess, measuring business growth. There's a sales part of it, but also, if I'm talking as an example from a construction lens, your P&L is one part of the, table, and the other side is actually measuring your project performance and thinking through how can I optimize my next project based on what I've just seen, what I've just operated through these last 3 projects. So how do you think through that, and how do you marry the two up? Can you marry those up between individual, I guess, itemized performance? So say from a recruitment perspective, we're talking jobs down to your overall P&L, or are they two separate kind of discussions?
They start off as 2 separate discussions, absolutely. They have to be aligned, and they have to tell the same story at the end of it. And you need to have those documents and those journeys and those learnings sorted from that. So, yeah, I think we can probably stick to the construction journey in that case, right? So, having worked in London for that, you'd have projects. You're also winning. You're also attempting to go for bids as well, right? So you're bidding all the time. You're trying to win new tenders, and you're trying to build up your pipeline. So at the end of it, you've got your own ongoing projects, but you're also trying to win new work because those projects have an end life. So you have to use the project sort of life cycle. You have to then understand for your new project that you're trying to tender on, what areas of learnings are you going to apply? Now, that could be things like what subcontractors you use. Was your revenue margin too low? Was your multiples of like anything that needs to be adjusted? Was your cash flow terms poor? Because whatever didn't work that first time in that formula, you can adjust it for the second project. And the idea is that you'd continuously evolve yourself. So then you've got this optimal mix that you got going for you that actually suits your business needs. So, you may have some projects that are really high risk, high reward. You may also have some projects that are low risk and low reward. And that's your balanced portfolio. But you do need to understand that everything has a difference, and everything has a purpose for your business at that time. There's no point of just going high risk, high reward, and then as soon as the risk goes up and you get no reward, and then you wonder why. It's because we didn't pay attention to financial data, right?
Yeah. That's a good point, because not just measuring, I guess, your performance, it's helping you look ahead from a tender's perspective, but also your budget and forecast, and understanding kind of what your runway looks like for the next 6 to 12 months as well. I've also found doing a process like that, and we're talking about financial data, it helps you identify easy wins. So as a small example, when we're looking through our data for a particular couple of projects, we noticed this vendor kept coming up in our subcontractor list. We dove down into that vendor and we realized we spent $2 million with this vendor for traffic control over the last 12 months. And an easy call out was, all right, can we do something with this vendor where we work out some sort of deal because we use them so often? So there's these little trends and things pop up when you start to look at your data a bit deeper. And again, you need to be close to your business to be able to look at those insights. Or if you're a finance person sitting in the business, you need to be able to call out those insights so that someone in the room with the nuance could speak up.
No, and that's really critical, right? If you work for a company that's got, let's say, multiple suppliers and different projects, those different project managers may not talk to each other. So in that case, your financial data really needs to be structured in a way that you can actually get out those insights really quickly, because project A to project B may have 2 different sets of people on it, and they might not be talking about, hey, what supply are you using for your traffic controller that's consistent with mine? But at the end of the day, the financial data can just still run by a supplier quite quickly.
Yeah.
And come back and say, that seems high. Like, where have we spent the money, and can we get some sort of agreement in place to, one, reduce margin or get to more preferred rates going on? So, absolutely.
Yeah. Nice. So, financial data, we've spoken about. Your finance data is essentially everything from your P&L and your accounting concepts down to measuring performance at an individual level. And also, I guess, look, there's drivers in there as well. Like, a lot of your leaders are rammed on some of this data as well. So that's why your financial data is really important. Let's talk best practices, Ash. Actually, let's flip it and talk worst practices. What's some of the worst things you've seen with financial data coming through, or any data for that instance, just so people know what they need to avoid?
Wow, that's a. I think it's irrelevant practices that actually contribute to no growth, right? So just because of traditional metrics, sort of to increase your pipeline of activity, that may not be relevant anymore. But it's just about sticking, like going, I'll be busy for the sake of being busy. I think that's like, it's difficult to see that because it actually doesn't swing any needles anymore.
Yeah.
What we need to be doing is going, well, if we're doing this activity, what outcome are we trying to achieve from everything? So that's one part. And the other part's going to be going, if you're buying a system to implement some sort of efficiency, make sure that it does that. Because I've seen plenty of systems in my life where it's come in for one area and it just becomes like some sort of like OneDrive equivalent, or a cloud environment where we store documents and do nothing more with that, right? And then basically that data then goes not within our environment, goes sit somewhere else. It's really hard to access. It's really difficult. Doesn't really integrate. And then we have these systems of downloading this, trying to download, export, understand what goes on. So that loop just never closes. Yeah,
that's a good example. We've used Blackline actually. Previously, and I still don't know how to use Blackline properly. Like, we stopped using it, but it was used as kind of, like you said, a OneDrive. It was used where a spreadsheet was stored in it and the rec was still done in the spreadsheet. And so I remember looking at it after like 6 months of using it, and I was like, why are we paying for this? We could just have these recs sitting on a drive. And there's, when we sat down with a professional, we realized there's actually a better way to use it. But we were like, we actually don't need it. We're paying hundreds and thousands of dollars for no reason, which we quickly scrapped. Another thing, Ash, you've probably seen this, is garbage in, garbage out. So big thing with financial data is, we always talk about, we're just reporting what's there. But sometimes what's there is just a lot of garbage inputs that come in. Is that something that you've seen?
Yeah, heaps. It's anything from, data validation, like basic data validations, like not typing in supplier names, not being able to see visibility. It could be anything of just where those numbers are associated to and what the purpose of that transaction was. So it's definitely garbage in, garbage out. You guys can't convert garbage to gold. Like, that process doesn't exist. So, I suppose a good analogy that I went to a Snowflake conference perhaps about a year ago, and they said, like, data itself, it's not a restaurant menu, right? So then that was critical. Like, it's probably struck like closer to me anyway. So he said, you can't just say, oh, look, I want a bit of AI, I want a bit of clean GL, and I want a bit of clean, machine learning, and get some, really good outputs. It's more like a gym routine, right? You go, if you want a six-pack, you got to really work hard, train every day, eat right. It's continuous, right? You can't just slag off for 6 months and expect your body to perform at its peak. Yeah. You got to keep working at it. And the data's exactly the same thing. Like, once it's in and you got a process, you got to keep reviewing it. Is it still relevant? Are these the points we're actually wanting to capture? Can there be more? Does it need to be less? And then you guys can adjust as your business scales up and down. If you guys don't get that data piece solid from the beginning, once again, this whole process would have been useless.
Do you do that? Do you have like a process of doing that regularly? Because I've been in teams, me myself, I've never driven that, because once you set something up, you kind of move on to the next kind of burning fire, and you just keep going from fire to fire to fire. You don't worry about something that you did.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the fires are what causes I try to look at the root cause of the fire, and it comes back down to like
Yeah.
usually we didn't have the right data in the right place. Therefore, this fire is actually eventuated. If we had the right data, it would have been a 15-minute job.
Yeah.
So then that becomes a whole big process around how do we get that right data going forward. So
Yeah.
it's you don't proactively look for it. Sometimes it comes and bites you first, and then you sort of come and try to fix your processes after.
Finance data. Who owns it? Is it the responsibility of the finance person or the IT person?
Neither of those guys. It's the responsibility of everyone in the business. It's everyone's.
It's like the ad. I'm Eugene. Everyone's got to own it. Everyone's Eugene. Ash, tell us about something that you've seen, I guess, in your business, because I think the beauty of your role is finance data is just a small piece of some of the reporting that you guys put through for your leaders to make decisions from, because there's all these other pieces of data flowing through as well. I guess tell us about a simple case study of where that's landed, where finance data has not just been critical to a decision being made, but also it's played a part into looking at other pieces of data that have come in as well.
Yeah, proper. It's a good question. It's critical in the sense of what you're trying to achieve for what purpose, right? So let's go back down to, let's say my goal is now to increase revenues, and there's a client that we've got that's actually, we're really writing them, everything's really good, we're partnering with them, they're going through a big transformation. That's all well and good. Finance data comes and helps when we come back and say, hey, we've recognized all this revenue, we got collected no cash. There's a huge concern. So you may as well continue doing all this work. There's a risk that you're not going to get paid for any of it. So this is actually, it's going to cause huge risk to you. Are you sure you want to continue with this work? That's where financial data comes in, because as a salesperson, all you care about is going, my profit, whatever you're REM'd on, REM being remuneration, that's all you care about, because you're just going, profit, tick, tick, tick. Do I care about the cash? No, that's a finance team's problem. That's not my problem. Someone else will collect that cash.
That's right.
Right. So that's where we can identify going, hey, what clients or, what types of work do we want to undertake? That was really critical. The next part was going, the payment terms. If there's a big payment term gap even, we can also figure things out. We know what's the optimal mix for the business right now. How do we want to structure it? If we're going for a new bid, what's worked before? What hasn't? Do guarantee periods work? Has it bitten us more times than we should have? Should we be agreeing to 24-month guarantee periods? In recruitment was probably not, right? Probably anything more than 6 months, you probably run a big risk, right? Because the churn of people in a market. So you got to really understand, financial data does play a difference, but you can actually start seeing the types of revenue that's coming in, the types of issues it's been creating, but also then how does that translate back to your operational outcomes? So it's about linking those two together to get that nice, harmony.
Yeah. I think twofold, if we put this in a small to medium business context, sometimes you identify or you look through these things if the business owner addresses problems. If you're sitting in one of those meetings and the business owner's like, why are we so cash poor? We can't, we're trying to manage our suppliers again this week. That's when you as a finance professional should be tweaked to be like, all right, I need to look into this because I need to understand why we're showing so much profit. And we have this gap between cash. But I think in general, curiosity of being a finance leader or a finance professional is really important, because this is the value that we add to businesses. More often than not, it's easy to just sit there and do your debits and credits. But if roles are evolving into this kind of, I think we mentioned in our last episode as well, to be this connector between not just finance and accounting, but also finance, accounting, data, insights into that business leader. Is that something that you guys are doing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We're in the full journey of that now. So, the finance disparate systems are now sort of coming into the mix now, into the overall reporting. So we're seeing the front end systems, time sheeting systems all combine now into this sort of utopia. So really good. But it's, it's that conversation's taken 2 years, right? So it was a very slow moving thing. Something that's a quick 10-minute fix is a 2-year process.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You've heard all the buzzwords in the world. Obviously, AI and automation is a big one now, but let's talk to the buzzword that was there 5 years ago or even 3 years ago around data visualization and all of this. One of the things that, businesses increasingly think, or even finance professionals think, oh, I need to learn Power BI because that's mentioned in every resume. How important is going straight to Power BI? I guess my question that I'm trying to ask you as well is, a lot of the reporting that you can see in visualization tools, sometimes it's easier to just basically understand them on a spreadsheet. Have you seen that journey where people are jumping straight to the big sexy toy before going on that next step beforehand and understanding kind of what they have, what data they have at their fingertips and what insights they need at first?
Yeah, at times, absolutely. I suppose it comes to, once again, like to that life cycle, right? Like if you've got minimal data and it's nothing really complex, you can absolutely just jump straight to the tool, right? Like and as long as you understand how to maneuver those tools, you'll be fine. That would require some sort of base level understanding, right? Like you would have had to use an Excel or whatever that looks like for you to just casually jump in. If you're a first time user and you just go into Power BI, it's overwhelming, or even Tableau, because there's a lot of buttons, there's a lot of things. You hit a chart button and things aren't working as you expect. So you'll struggle initially.
Yeah.
So there is a learning curve to it. But it's with each system, doesn't matter whichever BI system you use, to your point, if you don't understand what data you've got, it's going to be very hard to capture those bits of gold that are in there, because effectively what you're going to be doing is drawing a little pretty chart that you got no idea what that means.
Yeah.
And what the ramifications of that, the spikes meaning, and what are you meant to be doing with that as well. So that's going to be really challenging. So I think even if you start off in a platform like Excel, just play around with it, seeing what you can and can't get. Do you understand what's being shown, and can you figure that out? Then put that into Power BI. Yeah, that's probably a more sensible approach. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think those are good points. The other thing is as well, like data refresh life cycle. So I'm thinking of a specific example here. So when I first joined this company that I'm at now, one of the biggest things I was like, all right, I'm going to showcase my Power BI and my visualization capabilities. But I realized very quickly there was no point for that. And there was twofold reason. One was your finance data is only going to be right at post month end. That's just the way the business worked. All the processes kind of flowed that way. So my report would only be right literally 5 days after month end. So I was like, okay, firstly, that's my first big red flag, because this report is only going to be used at that point rather than live. And the second point was my stakeholder was never going to look at it on Power BI. All my board packs, all my other stuff, there's been this culture set. Not that it was a bad culture, it's just how the board requested it. They wanted stuff in PowerPoints, they wanted stuff in Word in a particular format, in these specific Excel graphs. And now I was thinking, all right, I've done all this great work, doesn't suit my stakeholders' needs, doesn't suit my business's needs, and I've just gone straight to the sexy toy because that's what I thought. I've come from a industry where that's what everyone uses. So I think that was good learning for me. Understand your user needs, understand your stakeholder needs before you start to play or build something, and take everyone on that journey if you're doing something like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's more like if you do take someone through that, it's a change management piece as well, right? You may have to do things in parallel for a little part, going, yeah, here's your existing, but have you considered seeing this alternative? Because initially, if you go to someone and say, hey, we're going to replace everything, it's a genuine, no, you're not. We want everything as it is. So yeah.
Utilization on, I guess, reporting. Do you find that you get asked to do a lot of reports and never gets touched? I guess you had the 120 reports or whatever.
Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, sort of maintained and owned that part. So yeah, I suppose now we've got the usage, which is better, like compared to Excel. Like if it's an emailed file, you don't know who opens it up, when that gets used, and the frequency of that either. Whereas now you've sort of got the ability to check when people are accessing it, what types of people, and we can check our own data refresh schedules as well. So it's more a combined approach now, but it's driven some better outcomes now. Like we're trying to get to for this organization, go back to the basics of self-drive, like you don't need to email somebody, raise a Jira ticket or whatever that looks like. and then for us to respond back to you. You can actually get your own data at your own fingertips. It just needs to either one, get some training, or figure out that it's going to be way quicker for you to go get it. So, yeah.
And I guess to neatly wrap this up, Ash, it'd be kind of criminal of us not to mention AI and automation. I think you alluded to one of this before. When people think about AI in this space, people automatically think, oh, AI is going to think for me and help me tell me what my next business problem or business solution is. But in the first step, where AI, I think like you mentioned, is helpful, is to help you think through your data and help you solve those types of problems first. So like you said, helps you think through how do I put a formula or code this in my visualization tool, or if you're a business owner thinking through this, sometimes you can just throw in your chart of accounts and say, this is the business problem I have. How can I best structure my data in order to answer these business problems, and what are the best tools I can use out of my stack? And you can give it your stack, and that's where AI, I feel like, is pretty powerful, especially in that first step. It may get to the stage where you can start to ask it questions, particularly with Copilot. I'm not sure if you played with it. I haven't yet. Which sits on top of your visualization and all these Power Platform layers. But I think if we keep it simple, that's where I see AI adding value. Is that how you guys use it too?
Yeah, just more as a soundboard really at this stage. I think, and which is the main thing, right? I'm like, oh, you can't figure this out. Like, tell it your problem, try to figure it out, see if it can sort of guide you in the right way or nudge you in the right way. So yeah, absolutely. And with Copilot, I've seen some like demos of that.
Yeah.
It's really designed for a more mature data organization. So if you're early on in this journey, it's not worth it at that time because there's not enough data for it to capture, and you haven't either structured. You don't know at this stage what's relevant to your organization and what isn't. So there's no point, I think, jumping on that gun too early, really.
Yeah, it's good to keep it simple. Any final takeaways, Ash? If someone was going through this data journey, they're on day 2 now, they've set up the chart of accounts, they've set up their financial structures, they've got their business problem, and now they're thinking through data and visualization reporting and how they can set up their budgets and forecasts. And
I suppose keep it in all the operational conversations, really. Like, try to figure out it shouldn't be two distinct conversations. One, like, when being the operational, and one being like, hey, the finance, and then data being, where's my data gone? Try to link up all those conversations together. So you'd all be looking at the same set of data. You'd all be looking at the same set of numbers. And then at the end of the day, everyone's going to be aligned on what everyone's trying to achieve. And that's going to be going, if data's missing, who's actually responsible for that? If data's there and we're making the right decision, let's keep doing more of that. If we need to pivot our strategy, let's do that. So I think aligning all those pillars, that's going to be really critical.
Yeah. And I think a good way to finish as well, if you're a business owner or a leader, it's always good to involve your finance leaders in your strategic conversations, because it helps them to think through, all right, how do I structure this? How do I add value? We've obviously been in rooms where leaders are like, oh, I've got this trust that I need to build in the room, and I can't have my finance leader there. And it's like, mate, you're not running the war room in the White House, all right? Relax. So I think it's important to take people on the journey, particularly the people that are involved in your numbers, your reporting, and your insights. I think that's really important as well. Ash, we love chivalrous people. When someone buys us a beer, we have this innate need to buy that person a beer back, even if it's 2 a.m. at night. Just like we have that need, what other needs do we have on this podcast?
To like and subscribe.
So if you're on this, be chivalrous, buy us a beer back. You don't actually have to do that. All you have to do is like and subscribe. That's how easy it is. Don't even have to buy a $16 pint at a Sydney CBD bar. Like and subscribe, guys, if you like it. If you found value, let us know. If there's something else you want us to talk about, let us know. We've got a ton of experience, I guess, in the industries that we worked with, but also in roles that we've been in. So if there's anything you want to tap into our knowledge with, hit us up. Otherwise, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks.